Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for inviting me to testify today. My name is Mark Johnson. I'm the Assistant Director for Science in the Division of Regional Operations for the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, known as ATSDR. We are a federal agency within the Department of Health and Human Services. Joining me today is Lieutenant Commander Michelle College, who is an environmental health scientist in the ATSDR Regional Office in Chicago. In this testimony, I will provide the committee with the summary of ongoing ATSDR assessment of community exposures to emissions from a concentrated animal feeding operation, or CAFO. The Excel Dairy Farm is a CAFO that is located outside Thief River Falls in northwest Minnesota. In May 2008, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, MPCA, and the Minnesota Department of Health received complaints about odors and health effects from residents living near the Excel Dairy Farm. People were reporting nasal congestion, sore throats, itchy eyes, trouble breathing, headaches, and nausea that they associate with emissions from the numerous waste lagoons at the dairy. In early June 2008, a group of citizens reported to the State Health Department that they had used a portable hydrogen sulfide monitor to measure elevated concentrations in areas around the Excel Dairy facility and nearby residences. Since early June, the state has been continuously monitoring the levels of hydrogen sulfide at 2 locations near the Excel property line. During that time, the concentration of hydrogen sulfide has frequently exceeded the Minnesota ambient air quality standard of 30 parts per billion averaged over 30-minute periods, and frequently exceeded 90 parts per billion, the maximum concentration that the state's instruments were able to measure. Based on this information, both the state of Minnesota and US EPA Region 5 have taken enforcement actions against Excel Dairy. At the request of US EPA Region 5, ATSDR evaluated the existing data and determined that there was a need to collect more information about community exposures to better characterize health hazards. In early June, ATSDR staff initiated an exposure investigation to collect continuous sampling data for hydrogen sulfide at 3 residential locations that were in close proximity to the dairy. ATSDR focused on hydrogen sulfide due to the volumes present in CAFO air emissions, its physical properties, and the toxicity associated with exposure to hydrogen sulfide. Stationary monitors were placed at both outdoor and indoor locations at 2 of these homes. Over the 3-week period, the monitors detected a maximum hydrogen sulfide concentration in outdoor air of 480 parts per billion. To evaluate exposures for potential health impacts, ATSDR uses what is referred to as a minimum risk level, or MRL, which is defined as an exposure level that is estimated to be without health impact for any individual for a specific period of time. For hydrogen sulfide, the acute MRL is based on the demonstration of an airway constriction amongst individuals with asthma who were exposed to 2,000 parts per billion of hydrogen sulfide for 30 minutes. From this study, we have derived an MRL value of 70 parts per billion for screening purposes. The monitoring data at the residences nearest to the waste lagoons showed that the 30-minute average concentrations of hydrogen sulfide in outdoor air exceeded that value for a cumulative total of 6 to 8 hours. Although ATSDR did not conduct a formal health study to evaluate the health of people living near the dairy, the symptoms described to the residents were consistent with the known acute health effects of hydrogen sulfide, including difficult breathing, eye irritation, dizziness, nausea, and headaches. Based on the concentrations that were detected, we have concluded that these conditions pose a public health hazard to residents near the dairy. We recommend taking immediate actions to reduce emissions from the facility, to establish a monitoring program to evaluate the effectiveness of those actions, and for Excel Dairy to restrict access to the waste lagoons on site to reduce direct exposures to children who may be living there. ATSDR and the State Health Department communicated these findings, conclusions, and recommendations to the state, to US EPA, and to Excel Dairy owners in writing last Friday. Mr. Chairman, I would ask that submit this letter for the record, which I think you have already made that request. In conclusion, under certain conditions, exposure to chemicals emitted from CAFOs can result in adverse health effects. In the case of Excel Dairy, community exposures to periodic elevations in hydrogen sulfide levels were determined to be a public health hazard. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this important public health issue.